All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Spencer Sutton, and I'm here with my co-host, Gray Hall. Where's your buddy, Matthew Whitaker?
He's gone. Kicked him off.
I think he's
no
in
more
Austin,
Matthew on the podcast. Yeah, he is down at one of those conferences. I don't envy his conference schedule. It seems like every week he has got some conference that he's going to, trying to get out there and grow the business. So just me and Spencer today, unfortunately.
That's right. Birmingham to Denver. Well, I'm excited about this episode. Gray, we were talking about this today, just really kind of going back to basics, because a lot of the times what you and I see when people fill out forms and when they're reaching out to us is they really want to learn, like, how do I go from 0 to 1? Like, how am I going to buy my first rental property? What does the process even look like? And I think a lot of times people get stuck because they're going in all kind of different directions. They're trying to, okay, how do I source an agent? How do then I go and source a contractor? And they're trying to put all these pieces together. But I'd like for you to, you run our brokerage department. I'd love for you to give us insight into how this process really works from our vantage point, like from the Evernest, the way we do it. And then I guess it would be similar anywhere you were working, if you're working with an investor agent.
Yeah, it definitely would. I think we've talked about a lot of kind of these pieces individually, but this is just kind of a very tactical, like, what does the process look like? There are a lot of investors who have only rented their primary, but they're buying investment properties, and they may have never bought a personal residence. I mean, some of this kind of mirrors, but there's definitely some extra steps that are in there when you're buying investment property, especially if you're not in the market. So this is just a very basic, like, if you bought a property, especially an investment property, you've probably heard a lot about this, but I think it's helpful to just kind of walk through the process, and we'll show you some of the tools that we use. And you probably use some very similar ones when you're kind of running the diligence, but just thought this would be helpful. We get a lot of questions about investors. So maybe this is selfish. We can record this content and send this out to people.
That's right.
But I think it's good. Like, when I do a lot of research before I, reach out to somebody at a company. And so this type of content I really like, because I can understand and even do some preparation before I get in the phone call when people are in that kind of research stage. So that's who this is focused at, probably first time investors just walking through the process, but also understanding some of the things that Evernest can help do, because we're in multiple markets and we are an investor focused brokerage at the heart of what we do.
Yeah. And I would say not even like, if you already own several properties, that's fine too. You may be looking, to work with somebody else. Maybe we have access into markets that you've never been into, but you're interested in, and you want to learn how we work. You've already owned rental property. Maybe you've kind of done it, like Gray said, kind of done it yourself. So let's get into it. Why don't you kick us off and start, with step 1 of our process?
Step 1 is setting your targets. The way that we view this is we want to partner with investors. So not partnering financially, but hey, we're a member of your team. Places like Bigger Pockets talk a lot about that. Having an agent who knows the market is extremely critical, and especially who knows the local markets. And I think just kind of on that, I had an investor reach out today, and they're like, hey, I saw this portfolio come across, and they reached out to me. And I've already talked to this other investor 3 or 4 times. So I kind of had the down and dirty on this portfolio from the onset. It kind of looks like a good deal, but there's also some nuances and some kind of things to watch out for. So we have that local agent component, and that local agent who knows the market like that wants you to help you set your goals. So when we say set targets, once you reach out to us, we hop on the phone call, we're going to help you to build what we call a buy box. And so a buy box is, what are the parameters of kind of the perfect deal that you want to invest in? So these are things like starting at, hey, how much capital do you have available? So these are good questions to kind of write down, think about for yourself, whether it's through a self-directed IRA or this is just cash you have, or maybe you have a HELOC. How much capital do you have available? And that can help us to target, time frame, but also markets. And that kind of dictates the purchase price. And so if you're going to be buying this with leverage or debt, and you have $100,000, that kind of helps us to set the purchase price to be looking for. And we want to get that as kind of narrow as possible. So 1 to $1 million is kind of tough for us to, really, I think, find the good property, because there's all different classes of properties within there. So we're helping you set what type of property you want. So A, B, C, or D, we can go through the pros and cons of each of those kind of class. We can help tell you, hey, what's a realistic yield or cash on cash return or cap rate to expect in the market. So I think this call is really helpful for understanding what's available in the market and what is realistic. Because I think sometimes that's the challenge a lot of times is investors thinking this, they could buy this 3 years ago, or maybe they bought a property 3 or 4 years ago, but the yields might look a little bit different of kind of the investment profile. And so I think that's a really helpful thing that we want to get on the same page so that you can be successful, but also you can start to, analyze different markets. If you think there's a better yield in another market, great, we can connect you with another agent over there.
Yeah, and some of these questions are going to help your team determine what markets are best for these investors, right? So depending on how much money they have, how much capital they're going to that they're going to bring to the table, what kind of return that they're looking for. Are they looking mainly for appreciation or cash flow or both? And that's going to help guide them to the right markets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And capital can be just kind of a good eliminator of certain markets. I think that's pretty overwhelming to look at, 20 different markets, 30 different markets that might be on a list. We can help you narrow that down based on what you want. Yeah. And I think also, are you looking for, hey, you got a lot of capital, you make a lot of money in your day job, you're looking for this to grow over 10 years, or are you looking to reach financial freedom in 5 years? Those are going to be two different kind of investor profiles, and you're likely going to buy different properties. And so we want to help you succeed. And so us knowing what to look out for you as narrow as possible is going to put us in the best chance to connect you with the right local agent in the market and also help identify properties that hit your goals. So a lot of that first call, typically about 30 minutes, getting to know kind of on a personal level what you're looking to do, answering some of those questions. And so the kind of takeaway from here is think through some of those. And if you don't know them, that's great. We can help walk through. We can give you the pros and cons. You don't need to kind of get on there and be the expert about all this, but knowing what you want out of this is a really kind of helpful first step. And then knowing how much capital you have, probably two kind of things to look at on the front end.
Okay. All right. So that's step one. What's step two?
So kicking off the process after we talk to you and kind of understand your buy box, understand your timeline. Are you looking to buy 6 months out, 12 months out? Are you ready to go right now? We'll connect you with a local agent or even a couple. So a lot of times we get on the phone and say, hey, these 3 markets sound like they fit your criteria. I think we can get you those types of deals. Let me connect you with these 3 different agents. And you can get on the phone with the local agent and talk to them about the market. They're going to know specifically things like I mentioned before, just about, hey, what's currently on the market? What can you do? Is this a good market for you? You can also start to understand how you're going to work with them. And so, hey, how are they going to deliver deals to you? How much help can they give analyzing the property? And also just, again, kind of refining that buy box. I think we get it at a high level in that first call. I think that second call is a really good place to try to kind of narrow that down. And once you've picked a market and you feel good about it, the agent's going to start looking out for deals for you. So we've got off-market relationships through wholesalers. We have properties that are currently managed by Evernest that the owner may be looking to sell that we could send over to you, and also just looking at the MLS. And so once we know the buy box, we can go out and go hunt for you. And I think that's kind of the most advantageous thing that investors want is somebody who knows your goals and then can deliver you good quality properties and give their kind of honest opinion about them.
Yeah, I was on the phone today with one of our brokers in one of our markets, and she had already what's interesting is she's already out there looking for deals that might possibly fit somebody's buy box. And so, sometimes these agents and brokers have deals already available when you sit down and talk to them about your buy box.
And that can be helpful too. Just asking, hey, do you have any current deals or deals that you've underwritten or deals that you offered on that didn't work out that maybe they can go ahead and send you over the work that they've already done. And so you can get familiar with kind of the analysis tool that we'll look at here in a second. I think that is a really helpful thing because agents are always, if you have a good deal, there's likely a buyer for it. And so they're always out, hey, where can we find the deal, and kind of leading with that. Then trying to play matchmaker with, hey, these 4 investors might like it. Let me kind of send that out to them.
Right. Okay, good. So go ahead.
Kicking off, and you can be looking at multiple markets. I mean, I think a lot of the investors might be looking in 2 or 3 different markets, and maybe they're only looking to buy one property, but whenever they find a good property in those markets, they're ready to jump on it. And I think that's what we find is a lot of people are maybe not market agnostic, but they don't really care if it's Tulsa or Birmingham, Jackson, or Little Rock. If they kind of all have the market fundamentals, they're okay with that. And feel free to shoot your agent deals. I mean, I think some of the best investors are at night on Zillow or Redfin and kind of looking and like, hey, this kind of looks good. What do you think you can get for rent? And so I think initiating some of that conversation can be really helpful too.
Yep, that'd be great. Okay, so then moving to step 3.
So this is where we get, hey, we know your buy box, agent, is good. You signed a buyer's agency agreement with them, so they're representing you as a client. They're going to start looking at deals. And what I'll share my screen here. So for those of you listening, this is our analyzer tool. So all of the agents are using this. If you want to see this in action, we have a couple other videos on YouTube where we're analyzing current deals. And so you can see how we're plugging these things in. I think this really helps to get on the same language. And so I've seen this happen before where two people analyze a property and get two different kind of returns, and you look and their assumptions are kind of like way off. And so I think this helps to, if you understand this sheet and you understand why these assumptions are set where they are, for example, maintenance percentage, the amount that you hold back for repairs, this can help you get on the same page with the agent. So I'll kind of share my screen and look at this real quick. So this is a rental property calculator. The agent, you can get this from our website. I believe under the investors tab, you can sign up and get a copy of this yourself. So really helpful tool. And so this is inputting asking price, purchase price, rehab budget, and rent. And it's going to spit out all of kind of your return. So we've got a nice little summary up here where you can start to value properties in multiple different markets and kind of analyze, hey, what does this fit my investor profile? We also have this helpful rehab estimator tool. And so this is meant from a desktop. If you're looking on Zillow, it's a quick way where you can check boxes and enter quantities of items. How many square feet is the house? And I've got to put the square feet somewhere else, but at a high level, you can check boxes and it will put a general price in there. This is not what we actually use to get the work done, but this helps you to, if you have no experience like estimating houses, we thought this would be a really helpful tool to understand generally how much is interior paint per square foot or exterior paint per square foot. How much is a full gut remodel on a kitchen? How much is a light remodel? So this is a really helpful tool that then flows into the analysis. And the other one that I really like is just the monthly analysis. I mean, a lot of investors who are cash flow investors want to know on a monthly basis, what are they going to cash flow?
Right.
At the end of the day is a lot of times why investors get into here. So we've got a monthly tab, and then we also have kind of a forward-looking tab where it'll look in years 1, 2, all the way up to year 30. And so you'll start to see if you have a mortgage on this property, as you pay down that mortgage, what do your returns look like as the home appreciates over a long time horizon? What do these returns look like? And so this page will have more detailed than the summary, but another kind of good tool. The really helpful thing is analyze 3 different deals, and you can start to see the differences and what the levers are. And you can play around with, hey, if I offer this much, this is the return here. If I can get rent on this, if I do this, how much rehab, et cetera. So I think it's a really, really helpful tool. Go watch some of the other videos on our YouTube channel where we're actually inputting information here, and you can download a copy and kind of play along right beside us. And I think that would be a really helpful tool for the investor and the investor agent to be operating off the same spreadsheet and speaking the same language, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll really like this tool because it helps. Like it doesn't let you forget things, right? So you're gonna always remember, hey, what are taxes on this property? What's repair and maintenance? All of these things that you may overlook over time. Plus, you're gonna have, property appreciation, rent appreciation, vacancy. So it's really, really comprehensive and a great way for you to analyze properties. So go ahead, go and download it on our website.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I've sent it to all my friends. No pride of ownership, but I think there's a lot of calculators out there. This seems to be pretty easy to use, and you can input 6 or 7 things and get a really quick analysis on here. So I've even got friends that sent it to me today, and just like Spencer was mentioning, he had 0% maintenance reserves, and I was like, "Hey, tell me about this. This looks great on cash basis, but you got nothing in here for maintenance." And so it was a good conversation that just kind of spurred, "Hey, why are you thinking about this the way that you're thinking about it?"
Right. Yep. All right, good. So
setting your targets, kicking off the project process, the agent, we're starting to look at deals. Once we find 1 or 2 or 3 or 10, if you want to buy 10 that fit your criteria, the process is going to be, hey, talking about offer terms with the agent. Offer is going to write up the offer, call the listing agent, start to get any kind of information. And so they'll help you put it into a process. And at that point, this is kind of, we move into the diligence process. And so
this is after we have it under contract, right? For our client. Okay. Gotcha.
That's the easy part, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. The agents are going to go out there and negotiate, and it can either go, hey, you put in the offer and it gets accepted, or you might be a backup offer and it might be 2 weeks and they filed a contract and they come back to you, or there might be some kind of countering and negotiation. And so I think a helpful tip too is know your min and know your max. And kind of take a hard line on that and don't feel like you need to stretch. But I think using that tool, say, hey, I can still hit the return, the 6% cap rate, the 5% cap rate at 120, and I can also want to get it at 110. And so, hey, these are kind of my guidelines, and you can let the investor agent go out there and negotiate that and get that under contract for you.
Yep. Good advice.
So after that, go into the diligence process. At a high level, you go under contract. We start running title work. So we connect to a title company who starts checking to make sure that all of the title work and that we can actually buy the property. There's no liens on the property, et cetera. The first big step is setting up an inspection. I always recommend using a third-party inspector. And so we've got a number that you can choose from. That's just, it's worth it to pay a couple $100s to not get yourself in and miss something on the property. So the agent will help coordinate that. It's really hands-off for you. So we will get a inspector out there. One of the things we can also do, I think that differentiates Evernest, is we can get a contractor out there during the diligence period to give you a rehab estimate. So the reason I harp on this, if you haven't bought a property, not a lot of people do this. I mean, you might be, as the investor, having to do this. We want to coordinate this work for you. If you have a contractor, that's great, but we want to offer this as a service because we have a lot of great crews that we have good relationships with. So in the diligence process, after the inspection's done and after you have kind of a scope of work, you can build, hey, what's my rehab budget? So if this is a turnkey property, you might not need that, but if the home needs work, this is a really big value add for anybody doing larger rehabs where you need to replace the roof and there's cosmetic updates. Diligence period typically lasts between 5 and 10 days, just depending on the market, how competitive it is. Obviously, the longer, the better. You get more time to make a decision, but it also makes it less competitive offer if somebody's offering a 3-day period. So we recommend on the first ones to at least 5 days, give us enough time to get the contractor out there, get the inspector out there, and have enough time to make a decision. So that's a really important step. And then at that point, either you're good to move forward at the price, or if there are things that came up that were unseen that are fair to ask for a credit for, you can negotiate that, and either a reduction in purchase price or a credit from the seller, or the seller can handle the repairs. So
I was gonna ask about that. Yeah. So typically you're either gonna go ahead and purchase it, or you're gonna renegotiate based on what the report says, but based on what the scope of work says, or well, those are really the two outcomes.
If you got another contract, fix it. Yeah, that's the other one. Is asking the seller to, and just depending on the deal, I think any of those three kind of work. I mean, obviously, if you're financing the deal, it's much better for the seller to pay for that because that's less cash out of pocket. Right. But then, do you trust the seller to fix it? Are you wanting to? Do you have a specific kind of vision of how you want to update the cosmetics that you'd rather do? Right. And then if you're using a loan, there's loan limits. So I think on conventional loans, it's 2% of the purchase price. So $100,000 home, the maximum credit that the seller can give the buyer is 2%, so $2,000. Right. Yep. Anything above that, there's some other kind of unique strategies that we can kind of work around, but that's generally how that process works.
Okay. All right.
That's the hardest part. Once you're through that, that's typically the hardest part. In the background the whole time, once you go under contract, you're sending this over to your lender. They're starting to do their kind of final underwriting. They're underwriting the deal. They're underwriting, maybe rerunning your credit. Maybe they're getting appointment verification. But hey, they're making sure that the pre-approval letter we gave you, we can still operate on those terms. And so that's kind of running along in the background. And then really after that, it's on to closing. Typically a finance property, minimum time they can close is about 3 weeks. More common, it's about 30 days from when you go under contract. And really, those are kind of the main steps. So diligence process and making sure you get a loan. And then you're kind of in this waiting period in between past inspection and waiting on the property to close.
Yeah. So in between there, I do want to point out that's when typically if you're working with Evernest to do this and you have an Evernest agent or broker, they're going to introduce you to our property management side of the business.
Mm-hmm. And you may have talked to them before, but if you haven't, that's a great entry time. Because you got a property, and so you can talk through what are the management options and plans, what do those cost. The brokers can give you some general information, but more specific stuff, the BDM would be really good to answer those. They'll start working on the paperwork, get the management signed. They'll start talking about, hey, what do we want to rent this for? And if there's a rehab, we'll start talking through that process. So if work needs to be done, we'll start that right after close and kind of loop in the PM team. So that we're all on the same page. Because at the end of the day, we want a tenant in there paying as soon as possible. And so that is why we need to start this process in between the time that we close so that we can get all of the proper documents uploaded. You can answer any questions. You can start to feel really good and kind of understand the process after the property closes.
And your agent's really going to like walk you through this whole thing. And they're already going to be talking to the property management side of the business because they're going to be getting the rental comps as you're even analyzing the deal, just to make sure, hey, we're sure we can get this for rent for that property.
Yeah, we didn't really hit on that, but that's one of the biggest things to get right is, what is this going to rent for?
Yep.
The benefit that our agents have is we don't not only have kind of all the public data that's out there. And so Zillow is a really good source for that. There's some other tools that we pay for subscriptions for, but we also have properties that we manage, that we leased, and we know what actually leased at. There's too many times where I see on Zillow, it was at 1,400, but the lease is actually at 1,300. And that can change your yield. So we've got our portfolio. We know how long things are sitting on the market. And so we can help adjust vacancy to basically account for that. And so, and that's kind of in the analyzing process. We can help get those rent numbers and then confirm those once we connect you over to the PM side.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, anything else?
That's mainly it. I mean, I think the other thing to hit on is, if all of this is done, if you know, you work with Evernest agent and you work with Evernest PM, and we can help manage the rehab for you, there's a lot of communication that goes on behind the scenes, and you're not having to kind of be the director. We try to take a lot of that burden off of you. And so trying to make good, smooth handoffs with good internal communication. And that is kind of like the magic that I see happening. And that allows investors to scale faster. It's just one less thing with a job and a family and other things going on they kind of have to worry about. The agent's there to make sure it gets closed, and there's a handoff over to the PM side where they help manage the rehab and then get the tenant in there and get it cash flowing as soon as possible.
Yeah, most of our clients are very successful professionals who are very busy, and you know, this is not something they want to do. They don't want to juggle. They have their active income, what they're doing professionally. They don't want to then have a second full-time job, because sometimes it can get kind of crazy trying to juggle everything all at once. So yeah, that's great. A great point. Well, that's it. Great. Well done. Thanks for explaining that. I appreciate it. I think that's very, very helpful. And if you're listening to this on, on a podcast, you can check out the video that we recorded here on YouTube if you want to see the tracker. We're also going to have a diagram of just kind of the process that we share with our clients, so you can check that out. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast.